Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're plunging into a very specific section of Scripture, Numbers chapter 31.
Right.
Our mission really is to just walk through the events, the commands, the outcomes described here. It covers, well, everything from military orders to purification, spoils. It's all in there.
It really is packed. It takes you right from this divine command for war all the way through the aftermath,
Yeah.
and you see this sort of societal and religious structures involved. It's quite something.
So let's start right at the beginning then. It kicks off with a pretty direct command given to Moses.
That's right. The Lord tells Moses, basically, take vengeance on the Midianites for the Israelites. After that, you'll be gathered to your people. So it's framed as a final task for him.
A final, crucial task before his death. Okay. And how does Moses react? What does he do?
Well, he acts immediately. He tells the people, get men ready for war against Midian to carry out what the text calls the Lord's vengeance.
And it's specific about the numbers too, isn't it?
Very specific. It says 12,000 men were armed for war. That's 1,000 from each of the 12 tribes.
Wow. Okay.
And Moses sends them out, led by Phinehas, who's the son of Eleazar the priest. And interestingly, Phinehas takes articles from the sanctuary and trumpets for signaling.
Articles from the sanctuary. And a priest leading the charge, so to speak. That seems maybe unusual for just a military campaign. What's the significance there?
Well, I think what's fascinating is how it frames the whole thing. It's presented less as just, a political fight and more as a sacred duty.
Right. Fulfilling a divine command.
Exactly. Having Phineas there and those sanctuary items, it really underscores that this war, as described in the text, is deeply tied to their religious identity.
Okay. So the force is ready. The mandate's clear. What actually happens in the battle?
The text tells us they fought Midian just as the Lord commanded Moses, and they killed every man.
Every man. And it even names names, doesn't it?
It does. It lists the 5 kings of Midian, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba. And crucially, it also says they killed Balaam, son of Beor, with the sword.
Balaam. Okay, that connects things, doesn't it? Back to earlier with Moab and the whole incident at Apar. His death here feels like closing that loop?
It certainly seems to tie up that storyline within the narrative, yeah, presenting his end as part of this judgment against Midian.
So after the fighting, what's the immediate aftermath? What about survivors, spoils?
Well, the Israelites capture the Midianite women and children. They take all their herds, flocks, goods. Everything is plunder.
Okay.
And they burned all the Midianite towns and camps. Total destruction of infrastructure.
So they captured the people and property, destroyed the settlements, and then brought everything back.
Exactly. All the captives, all the spoils, all the plunder. Brought back to the camp on the plains of Moab, to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the whole assembly.
And this is where the story takes a really sharp and difficult turn. Moses sees what they've brought back, and he's not happy.
No, he's furious. He and Eleazar and the leaders go out to meet the army, and Moses confronts the officers. He asks them, have you allowed all the women to live?
Why the focus on the women? Why is sparing them the cause of such intense anger?
This is a key point the text makes explicit. Moses links these women directly to what happened at Peor.
Ah, right.
He says, essentially, they were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and led the Israelites away from the Lord at Peor, which caused that plague among our people.
Okay, so that incident, the immorality and worship with Midianite and Moabite women, seen as a massive spiritual betrayal that led to a plague. So Moses sees these surviving women as the root cause of that disaster and a potential future threat.
That's the reasoning given in the text. It's why he's so angry. And it leads to the very severe command that follows.
Which is
Moses commands, now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man.
Wow.
But say for yourselves every girl who has never slept with a man.
That's incredibly stark. A sorting based on age and sexual history. It's difficult to read.
It is a very challenging part of the text. It presents this judgment based on that past event at Peor, and also, eliminating potential future male enemies.
Yeah.
Only the young girls, deemed virgins, were to be spared according to the command.
Yeah.
Reading it today is tough, obviously, but the text connects it directly to Peor and Balaam's advice, presenting it as a consequence. It's just a stark picture of the severity described in this ancient account.
Okay. So after this terrible sorting of the captives, the focus shifts again, doesn't it, to purification?
Yes, absolutely. Ritual cleansing was essential before anyone involved could re-enter the main camp.
For the soldiers, anyone who'd killed or touched a dead body.
Right. They had to stay outside the camp for 7 days. And they had to purify themselves and also the surviving female captives on the third day and the seventh day.
And it wasn't just people who needed purifying, it was objects too.
Correct. Everything taken as spoil clothing, leather things, goat hair items, wood, all needed purification. And Eleazar the priest gives even more specific instructions for different kinds of plunder.
What were those specifics? For the material goods?
Well, for things that could handle fire.
Hmm.
You know, gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, lead. They had to go through fire and be purified with this special water of cleansing.
Okay. Fire and water.
But things that couldn't take the heat, they were just purified with water. And on top of that, everyone involved had to wash their clothes on the seventh day. Then they could come back into camp.
That level of detail, distinguishing between metal and wood for purification, it's really striking. What does this heavy emphasis on purification tell us about their worldview as it's presented here?
I think the main takeaway is how central these purity laws were. It wasn't just about hygiene. It was about restoring ritual purity after contact with death or with foreigners, which the text sees as polluting, kind of disrupting the sacred order.
So everything touched by the battle, by death, had to be ritually cleansed to bring it back into their sacred community space.
Exactly, through these very specific rituals.
So purification's done. Now we get to the spoils. There's this huge amount of captured wealth and people.
Yeah.
How is it divided?
The Lord gives very detailed instructions for this to Moses, Eleazar, and the heads of the families. The basic command: count up all the captured people and animals, then divide everything into 2 equal halves.
Okay, 2 halves. Who gets them?
One half goes to the soldiers who actually fought in the war. The other half goes to the rest of the Israelite community.
A straight 50-50 split between the fighters and the non-combatants.
Right.
Okay, but then there's more to it, a kind of tribute system.
Yes, exactly. This is where it gets interesting about their society. From the soldiers' half, a very small portion, 1 out of every 500, was set apart as a tribute for the Lord.
1 in 500. People, cattle, donkeys, sheep.
Yep, 1 in 500 each. And this tribute from the soldiers' share, it was given to Eleazar the priest.
Okay, a tiny fraction from the soldiers going to the priesthood. What about the other half, the community's share?
From the community's half, the portion set aside was much larger. 1 out of every 50 people and animals.
1 in 50. That's 10 times the rate.
Right. And these were selected and given to the Levites, the ones who took care of the tabernacle, the main sanctuary.
So 1 in 500 from soldiers to the priest, 1 in 50 from the community to the Levites. What does that difference tell us about how they saw, military success, community wealth, and supporting the religious structure?
Well, it's not just accounting, is it? It gives you real insight. It shows how military success was directly linked to supporting the religious establishment, priests, and Levites. But through these really defined contributions, or maybe sacred taxes, and the levels are different. Maybe the smaller bit from the soldiers is like a first fruits offering, right from the source. While the bigger slice from the whole community shows everyone was expected to chip in to support the Levites in the tabernacle.
And the text actually gives the numbers, right, for the plunder that was left after that command about killing some captives.
Yes, it lists the totals. 675,000 sheep.
Wow.
72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 women who had never slept with a man.
Astonishing numbers. Huge wealth. And it specifies the virgin status of the women, matching that earlier command.
Exactly. And then the text carefully shows how the division and the tribute worked out with those huge numbers.
Can you walk us through that calculation as the text lays it out?
Sure. So soldiers, half, they got 337,500 sheep.
Yeah, the total, yeah.
0.36 thousand cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people.
And their tribute from that, the 1 in 500 for the Lord.
Right. So from that soldier's portion, the tribute given to Eleazar the priest was 675 sheep, 72 cattle, 61 donkeys, and 32 people.
Okay.
And the text notes Moses gave this tribute to Eleazar just as commanded.
A very small number, as you said, from the soldiers shared directly to the priest. What about the community's half?
Same amounts initially, 337,500 sheep, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people.
And from this half, 1 in 50 went to the Levites.
Correct. Moses selected 1 out of every 50 people and animals from this community half and gave them to the Levites again as commanded.
It really is remarkable. It's not just the rule, but the actual worked example with specific numbers from this campaign. It makes it feel very concrete.
It does. It gives the narrative a feel of almost historical reporting, doesn't it? Detailing the commands and then exactly how they were carried out, the results.
Okay, now here's another twist. After all this, the battle, the sorting, the purification, the detailed division, the army officers come to Moses. What do they report?
They come and say, "Your servants have counted the soldiers under our command, and not one is missing."
Not one out of 12,000 soldiers in what was presented as a major battle to enact divine vengeance. Not a single casualty. That's presented as, well, miraculous within the story.
Absolutely. It's framed as this clear sign of God's favor and protection, an extraordinary outcome.
And because of this amazing result, they bring an offering.
Yes, the officers bring a special offering to the Lord. It's gold articles that they had personally gotten as plunder, things like armlets, bracelets, signet rings, earrings, necklaces, stuff they picked up themselves.
And why do they bring this offering of personal gold? What's the stated reason?
The text says it was to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord.
Atonement. But they just reported 0 losses, suggesting everything went perfectly. Divine favor. Why atonement? What might that mean here?
That's a really interesting question, isn't it? Making atonement. It's this ritual act described as sort of reconciling or purifying themselves before God.
Mm.
The text doesn't explicitly say why they felt they needed it after such a success, especially one commanded by God where no one died. Maybe it's just profound thanksgiving, or maybe acknowledging that warfare itself, even sanctioned warfare, carries some kind of ritual disturbance.
Or just piety, showing dedication.
Could be. The text just gives the purpose, atonement. It leaves us wondering a bit about the nuances of their ritual understanding.
And Moses and Eleazar accept this gold. It sounds like a lot.
They do accept it, and the total weight given is 16,750 shekels of gold from the commanders. That's a very substantial amount of gold by ancient standards. Shows how much wealth was involved.
A huge offering. And then there's that little note right after the weight is mentioned.
Ah, yes. The text adds, each soldier had taken plunder for himself.
So on top of all the massive, collectively managed spoils that were divided up so carefully according to the rules, individual soldiers also kept personal loot.
That's what it sounds like, yes. The big collective wealth followed those strict rules for division and tribute. But it seems individuals also gathered personal plunder. And this specific gold offering from the officers came from their personal haul.
Interesting distinction. And where did this offering end up?
Moses and Eleazar brought it into the tent of meeting. It was to be a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord, a permanent reminder of the victory, the soldiers' safe return, and this special offering from the officers.
So looking back at this whole chapter, Numbers 31, it's incredibly dense. What stands out to you about the whole sequence? The commands, the numbers, the rituals? How does all this detail shape your understanding of this moment?
The level of detail is just striking. It's so much more than they fought a battle and won. You get the divine order, the military action, the really harsh handling of captives, then meticulous purification rules for people and objects, down to the type of metal. Then this incredibly structured system for dividing wealth, including specific religious taxes, and finally this act of dedication tied to this amazing outcome of no casualties.
Wow.
It paints a picture of a community operating under this really strict, divinely given code that covers everything: war, economics, ritual life.
Yeah, it goes from the huge scale divine vengeance, national war, right down to the nitty-gritty of, sorting women, cleaning pots, counting sheep. It's like the entire life cycle of a military operation laid out in this ancient text.
And it makes you grapple with the text in different ways all at once, doesn't it? It's acting like history within its own narrative world. It's providing legal or procedural templates. And it's fundamentally a religious text about God's commands and the community's response.
Right. So given all these explicit, detailed instructions we've just walked through on warfare, captives, purification, managing resources, what does this chapter suggest about the values and maybe the practical realities of the community described here at this specific point in their story?
That's the big question, isn't it?
How does this particular ancient account challenge or maybe reinforce how we usually think about ancient warfare and what came after?